On screen now, you can see some of the minimum recommended setups, as well as some of the required items that you would want for raids. These setups are not set in stone and can be upgraded accordingly. I would not, however, recommend walking in as a learner with less than this gear. As you progress your melee setup, some of the big upgrades you'd like to see would be a Dragon Hunter Lance for a huge DPS increase, Serp Helm, an Amulet of Torture, Primordial Boots, and Bando's Tassets, focusing primarily on the Lance, Torture, and Serp Helm upgrades, in that order or as you can afford. Next we have the range setup. The biggest upgrade to get would be the Anguish and the Dexterous Prayer Scroll, two of the most huge DPS increases you can get in the game. You can also pick up a Dragon Hunter crossbow and a Novice Assembler whenever possible, but the end goal would be to have a full Bofa set as opposed to the Dragon Hunter crossbow. Last we have the mage setup, where we see the least amount of changes, generally because the occult and the god cape kind of take over. But the first thing you could upgrade would be the Trident of the Swamp and the Tormented Bracelet, and then finally upgrading Mystics to Arams. In raids, there are many layouts, but typically for learners, I would recommend looking at Muttadile, Shamans, and Mystics. It's some of the simpler combat rooms and also provides you with overloads for the raid. The first room that we're going to go into is Mystics, so you're going to want to bring a Salve Amulet EI for the raid, as well as a Sanfu Serum or Antidote for Shamans. Pretty much standard with every raid, you're going to want to be bringing a Stamina Pot, and then either a Combat Pot or a Ranging Pot, depending on what combat rooms you have and which styles you'll be using. In MSMs, you will typically bring a Range Pot, as you're not going to be using Melee for any of the rooms. For Mystics, you're just going to be praying magic, and then just T-bowing, blowpiping, or using a shadow. Make sure that unless you're using a shadow, you'll be equipping your Salve Amulet EI, as the damage bonus is significant. Outside of praying mage, the only other mechanic in this room really would be setting up safe spots in these corners by stepping in a melee distance of the Mystic and then walking diagonally like this along a northeast or northwest diagonal. Okay, and that's Mystics. Fairly simple, just pray mage and attack. Not a big deal. Going to be passing a little in-between room on our way to Ice Demon. For Ice Demon, you're going to want to pick up an axe and a tinderbox, and the goal of this room is going to be lighting the braziers with 1.5 inventories of logs per person. This will reduce the frost around the Ice Demon and allow you to initiate combat with him. As the learner, you're going to notice that on the sides of the room, perpendicular to the Ice Demon, there is a light-sided wall and a dark-sided wall. The light-sided wall, if stood up against, is going to be a safe spot. For the person tanking, when they see the boulder in the air, they're going to move 2 tiles in any direction to dodge the boulder. For the person safe spotting, you're just going to stand against the wall and hit the Ice Demon with either a Bofa, a crossbow, T-bow, shadow, some type of long-range weapon. At the start of Ice Demon, if you have thralls, summon them, and if you can, dump hammer specs or BGS specs, some type of defense lowering special attacks into the Ice Demon, as his defense level is quite high. Just keep in mind that if you have a room like Tecton, or if Ice Demon is the last room in the raid, that you might want to save your special attacks for the next room, being either Olm, Tecton, or the likes. And that's Ice Demon. It might have been a good idea at Mystics for us to drop one of our brews to pick up Buchu seeds to bank at the chest here, but hindsight. Moving on, at the end of each floor, you will see a little yellow pool. You can hit that to restore your run energy. Our next room is Shamans. This is one of many layouts, and this is typically known as the hardest layout. It's called Free-for-All Shamans, because there's not really many safe spots you can do for this. They are exactly the same as they are in the overworld outside of chambers. You want to stand next to walls so they don't jump. They have an auto attack that is a normal range attack, and they have an auto attack that is a 5x5 poison, which is in the air currently. That'll deal upwards of 30 to 40 damage in 5x5 AoE splash. So typically the way to avoid it is every time you see his attack animation start, you'll start moving to one side just in case he throws it. Otherwise, you stand next to the wall, you pray range, and you attack. And that's Shamans. This is also the reason that you would be bringing a Sandfuse Serum or an Antidote. They deal very high poison damage. Whilst it will not protect you from the splash damage, it will protect you from the 12 damage over time from poison. The next room is Muttadile. You're going to want to protect from range and equip your Blowpipe or Shadow or Bofa. You're going to want to deal with the meat tree. Muttadile, upon reaching half HP, will then walk towards the meat tree and heal from it. You can either chop the tree down with an axe, or you can freeze Muttadile. Both options are viable. In this specific raid, we chose to chop down the tree, but freezing Muttadile is also an option. You'll see that when she gets in melee range of us, we will be switching to protect from melee. This is only for the little Muttadile, as when the big Muttadile comes out, her melee hits can hit extremely hard. Muttadile drops 1 Overload and 1 Prayer Enhance, and the big Muttadile will drop the same, but also a Xerix Aid and a Revitalization Potion, or a Ceradomin Brew and a Super Restore. Much of the same with the baby Muttadile, you'll be wanting to range the big Muttadile. In this raid, you'll see we have a southwest tile safe spot set up where monsters will line their southwest tile up with you. As a result, her body is going to get stuck on the wall below us, so we can sit here safely and just protect from range and not worry about her getting in melee distance and chomping us. We noticed this was the last scav room before the final, which kind of sucks because there's a puzzle in between, so it takes longer. So on screen, I'll flash an image of like a little cheat sheet for the amount of supplies you'll want and need to finish your prep. These are all rough estimates and not completely necessary, but if you gather this many supplies, unless you're dying inside the raid, you're not going to really have much issue completing with this many supplies. As we finish scavving, we're going to move on to Tightrope. Tightrope is another puzzle room. It's one of the best point puzzles that you can get, so it's always nice to have it inside the raid. It's really simple. All you do is pray mage and attack the mages, and then pray range and attack the ranges. There's some fancy skips you can pull off, but if you're just doing casual raids, you're going to want to kill everything in the room because you get the most points that way. If you're doing sweatier methods, you can then go for speeds and skipping rope, but I wouldn't recommend doing it in casual raids because you just lose point potential. And if you're doing 30+ minute raids or even over 20-minute raids, like the points that you're saving are really not that big. So now that we're done the raid, we can start doing our pre-Olm. You'll see we'll deposit everything and start getting ready to put things together. We notice here that we don't actually have Buchu seeds, so I'm grabbing a rake and I'm putting it in the shared chest so my buddy can withdraw it and get us some Buchu seeds. While he does that, I'm going and picking gourds and filling them up at the geyser. Full inventory is enough for both of us. He put the seeds back in the shared chest and I'm planting them. As long as you're not making overloads, so if you got overloads as a drop from Muttadile, all you're really going to need is Buchu. You're not going to need Nox or Gold Bar. You're going to want to grab your secondaries that you saw from the cheat sheet. If you got an Enhancer Muttadile, you also will not need that. You're going to make yourself 3 or 4 restores and the rest brews, probably 10. You'll probably only be able to fit 10 or so. If you can fit more, by all means make more. I personally can only fit 6, maybe 7 if I brought 2 restores. I like to bring 3 restores just in case somebody dies and I need to survive longer. Yep. When you get downstairs, for a little bit of extra supplies, you can drop a brew and a restore right in front of the door. This will allow you to have extra supplies after overloading. Walking in pre-overloaded, you'll probably save 4 brew doses. So you'll drink a overload, then an enhance, 4 doses of brew, 1 dose of restore, drop the 3-dose restore, and then pick up the 2 potions that you dropped earlier. And before we get too far into Olm, I just wanted to explain how his vision works. Olm's head will look one of 3 directions, to the left, right, or center, and based on where he is looking is where he will actually be able to auto-attack. Your job here will be on the dark blue line on the melee hand. Olm has 2 different basic attacks, his mage attack and range attack, as seen on screen. He also has a couple special and phase-specific unique attacks that I'll go over as they appear in the video. But these are his main 2 attacks, and based on what he used last, he's more likely to use that attack again. So if he used a mage attack, pray mage. If he used a range attack, pray range. Olm will also sometimes shoot out attacks that will turn off your prayers. If you get a green chat message and a green ball, that's range. Blue chat message and a blue ball, mage. And a red chat message and a red ball is melee. Olm attacks on a 4-tick cycle, and he always follows the same rotation. He will auto attack, there will be an empty event, then an auto attack, and then a special attack. The auto attacks can be any of his basic attacks, phase-specific attacks, or prayer orbs, while the special attacks will always be the same. Starting off with crystals, crystals will spawn under you, dealing massive damage. Walk off them to avoid the damage. Lightning will spawn on either side of the room and make its way across the room in a straight line. Walk out of its path or you will be stunned and have your prayer disabled. The last special attack is teleports. Teleports will pair you with a teammate. After 8 ticks, you guys will then swap locations and take damage relevant to how far away you were from one another. The farther away, the more damage you take. Stand on top of your teammate in order to reduce this damage to 0. At the start of the first phase, you'd like to dump your hammer or BGS specs into the melee hand. Most of the time it'll cripple right away, which means you will not be able to attack the melee hand. And then you're just going to want to turn your Trident or Tunic Shadow on a long range and start maging the mage hand. Every once in a while the hand will uncripple, and you can just hit it again and re-cripple it. When the hand's crippled, it can't perform any of its special attacks, so no lightning, crystals, or portals. What we just saw there was one of the crystal-specific phase attacks. So if you see in the chat box, it says it spawned with the power of crystal. It shot out a couple of crystal grenades that are 5x5s and will blow up. This is the other crystal-specific attack, the red light. You don't have to attack during this. The easiest way to do this is to just walk in a straight line. The crystals fall every 2 ticks. So you will not take damage if you're just walking in place. Now that the mage hand is dead, the melee hand will not cripple, and we're just going to focus on taking that down and reacting to the attacks that Olm actually gives us. We're going to see portals. We're going to see crystals coming as the next special attack. And his next auto attack is a prayer orb. Okay. As we kill the melee hand, we're going to see crystals fall from the ceiling in between the phases. The crystals are in 3x3s, so just try to stay away from them in between the phase to save your HP. Dump your special attacks and begin repeating the first phase. So it's crippled, we won't see crystals. We probably will skip an entire cycle because it's crippled. We're in acid phase. He just shot Pocket with a acid trail. Same as the red light under you, the crystal attack. You're just going to want to walk. He's skipping specials whilst doing this, so I mean, you don't need to do all that. If you get it, you can just walk it out. As you see here, I'm doing it, just walking in a straight line, not taking any damage. In the third phase, as you could tell by Olm having a green glow around him, we're going to do things a little differently. The melee hand will not cripple in the third phase. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the melee hand very low. In the third phase, and only the third phase, you have to kill both the hands at a relatively similar time. Otherwise, the other hand will regenerate to full health. Okay, Pocket's actually going to come to me because there's a bomb on his side. Okay. Now we're just going to switch to Mage Gear and long range the Mage Hand because the melee hand is almost dead. And we're just continuing the fight as normal. Nothing's too bad. Typically, I would prefer if I got the melee hand a little bit lower. This flame-specific attack is the Flame Wall. Neither of us actually brought water spells in, so if somebody's on Ice Barrage or Standard Spellbook where they can Water Blast it or use some type of water spell, they can free somebody from the Flame Wall. After killing both hands, head phase starts. Crystals will now frantically fall from the ceiling, and a new special attack will come out. The little blue portals you just saw on the ground. If you stand on them, you will not take damage, and Olm will not heal, as you see there. And that should be the raid. If you enjoyed the video or it helped in any way, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Peace.